what does the Nigerian culture think about suicide? And my mom and dad literally said, my mom, it's an abomination, an abomination.
I just knew what I was going through at that moment, at that place, at that time, and I couldn't see past it. So I went for it.
Let's walk cleverly on the beat.
What is up, guys? This is the African Millennials, and we are so ecstatic to be here with you. Let's go. We're gonna delve right in, but before that, we're gonna introduce some new faces and some old faces too. I want to introduce myself. My name is Cody on UK. We'll go right around the room.
Sure. My name is Yazzie.
Hi, Yazzie. My name is Jarrell, Africa. Hi, guys.
My name is Sochima.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Sheikh Nunar. Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum.
Gerard Lindsay, Gentleman J.
Hey.
Gentlemen J.
Y'all know me, A-Crown.
My name is Jonathan Elias, supporting Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Nigeria.
Representing always. Hell yeah. So we're gonna delve right in. Jonathan, what is our topic for today?
I got you, brother.
All right, y'all ready?
Yes.
Dear AMs, is suicide a selfish act or a mental illness? Should we even feel sorry for the people who choose suicide as a way out?
Wow.
Seriously.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good topic.
Nobody cried.
Yeah.
So they're asking how we feel about those that commit suicide. Are they suffering with mental illness, or is it
just straight
selfishness?
Yeah.
I think
Okay,
it's mental illness, like 100% mental illness. To say it's selfish is like, I don't know, it's like somebody they killing themselves, they taking their life away. You know what type of mentality you need to have to just like, I'm gonna end it all right now, kill myself.
Yeah, it's like such a huge thing to actually go through with like taking your own life, the biggest gift in this world.
Yep.
It's gotta be a mental illness, and you gotta have some like sensitivity towards the people that are going through that kind of, you know, it's a disease.
Right, and the thing is, what we need to understand are the people who think that it could be selfishness. You have to understand that people who suffer from PTSD, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, these are mental illnesses, and this skews your, you have a tunnel vision when you're looking at life. You feel like I'm a burden to these people. You're not thinking that these people, my family, my friends, my loved ones, they're gonna miss me. You think that you're the burden.
Right.
And what does a human being do when they feel pain?
Right.
They try to end the pain.
Yeah,
That's what a human does. I do not think suicide is a selfish act. I think it is something that is not controlled. The brain is the most powerful organ you have. And when you're living in a tunnel and you don't see anything except for what your demons are basically saying day in and day out, it's uncontrollable. And I feel like people don't realize or sympathize or understand that because they're not going through it. So I feel like the people who say that the person who committed suicide is selfish are selfish themselves. You take medicine.
The stats, a lot of it say like, it's when people really have no way out, when the pain is just so overwhelming that there's nothing else that they can do.
Also add that the suicide itself is the act, not the mental illness. So a lot of times they have depression, they're severely depressed, and that's a chemical imbalance in the brain. It actually is a disease, so they're suffering from a disease. So to call them selfish, it's kind of like, would you call someone who has diabetes selfish?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Another thing I think we should also bring up to the table is that the human brain, it can't tell the difference between what's imaginary and what's reality. So a person who thinks that there's no way out, even if there might be 1,000 other ways out that us from the outside could see, like, oh, but they could have done this, but they could have done that, they could have sought help. A person in that state, they can't tell apart. It's like a physical threat to them, any form of pain, whether it's just something that I'm thinking about or it's something that I'm actually going through, like someone's coming at me with a knife. Your body's gonna react the same exact way.
And it's really great that we're talking about the neurological aspect, because when we're talking about mental illness, especially for that, we understand that our prefrontal cortex, that is really an effect for what happens with people who actually commit suicide. Our prefrontal cortex deals with our high related risk factors and fight or flight. And so with that, those neurotransmitters, specifically serotonin, which deals with happiness, appetite, sleep, all those are completely kind of washed away. And autopsies have been done since the 1980s, which compare brains of people who have those suicidal thoughts and who kill themselves, as opposed to people who just have regular mood disorders. And those neurotransmitters, especially the prefrontal cortex, huge amount of changes. So we have the proof scientifically of what happens with people who have suicidal thoughts or behaviors. When you look at the autopsies of people who have died from suicide, these autopsies have been done since the 1980s, and what is found within victims who have committed suicide is that in their prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain that deals with risk-taking and all those emotions that come with that, we basically see a literal chemical imbalance where there is differences in the color regions of that area, as opposed to individuals who have gone through mood disorders but actually died from natural causes.
I do have a question though. So y'all know I'm in entertainment. I love social media. I feel like we all have an Instagram account, Twitter, whatever it may be. What do you guys feel about these celebrities that do try to commit suicide, like a Kalani, and announce it, and
Kalani
they take
try to commit suicide?
and actually take pictures of an IV in her arm, like, hey, I'm so happy that I'm alive.
You lied.
So now, what do you feel about that now?
Glamorizing suicide?
So,
are you kidding?
Cry for help.
For me, I think that.
Yes.
Thank
you for bringing that up, because I don't think it's attention.
You think it's attention?
I don't think so per se, because I remember reading something about suicide that said a lot of times right before they commit suicide, they regret it already, and they don't want to go through with it. And luckily if they don't and they're still here with us, they'll do something like take a picture of their IV and
for hope.
It's so cheap. Like a lot of people that do commit or try to commit suicide are doing it for attention, or as a way to cry out for help. I totally hear what you're saying, but a lot of the times when people try to commit suicide, they really are doing it as a cry for help. They're doing it for attention. I think that situation with Kalani.
I think it's for
Dude, come on, listen.
Hold on.
Come on, it's a sad thing, and you're in the hospital taking pictures of yourself. That's like, hey, I need help, please, look at me.
Is a cry for help the same as attention seeking? Is that the same thing?
Yes. Is it not?
I don't think so.
I think so.
See, that's where the selfishness factor comes in.
Right.
When you're looking for attention, there is a level of selfishness. That is selfishness. If you're willing to kill yourself because your parents are not talking to you, or you're not getting attention from certain people, your friends, family, whoever, and you're like, all right, I'm just killing myself and people won't care about me now. That is selfishness. Because the thing about it is death doesn't just happen to you. It happens to the people around you. Your family feels it, your friends feel it. There's a level of depression that people go through when they lose somebody. So
but again, can you call it selfishness if we know that this is happening because of mental illness?
Exactly. See, that's what
my thing is, okay, go ahead.
Personally, look, let me jump in here real quick. Personally, I think it's when dealing with celebrities who put that to the forefront, that they're trying to take their lives, I think it takes away personally from people who are actually going through situations from pre-existing conditions. Since 1999, 24% of the suicide rate has risen. it's risen 24%, I'm sorry. So we have to look at that. That's a very alarming number. And for someone to go online to take it as a joke, me personally, I feel like it's not something to be played with.
Who's taking it as a joke?
Kalani.
With their celebrity status, with their level of stardom, you know, there comes real issues that are rooted in depression, rooted in loneliness, rooted in, you know, just pain. And at the end of the day, you know, we still have to take things serious, even though it is on that level. But there can be some capitalizing on that as well when it, you know, and it's seen every day in, you know, in the celebrity world and, you know, just the Hollywood, that something may be real to someone and then they'll capitalize off of it by making memes, or they'll make, you know, new dances. And I think that takes away from a serious matter instead of putting it into the seriousness that it should be taken for.
You could see it that way, but you could also see it as awareness. As her trying to show the world that this is really happening.
It's not normal behavior. I'm not trying to justify. It's not normal behavior.
An awareness thing?
So after she did do that at her concerts, she would talk about suicide, and then she would give, you know, the prevention hotline and whatnot. But for me, like I said, I feel like it's glamorizing it a bit to the point where you're in. But when you're in bed, literally hours after you've just been revived, and you're taking a very angled picture of the IV in your, like.
And what did she caption it?
I forget, but my thing is, it's like.
So what would you rather she do? Because maybe that's her outlet, and maybe that's what allowed her to even want to come back to life. The fact that people are there waiting to hear from her. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think that you need to take, if this was a real thing, to where my issue is selfishness comes after you try and commit suicide. If you try to commit suicide and it's how you survive, it's how you really play it out. True. You know, and the fact that she did all that, and this is right after she got caught cheating with her boyfriend. She, you know what I mean? Like, her name was already being dragged. Every concert that she was at, they were booing her. Yeah. I feel like it was a way for her to come back and get sympathy from fans and people who did not like her for that. I feel like there are times that celebrities glamorize the whole suicide situation, like their story. It's unfortunate. It's definitely a cry out for help, but I feel like it's a wrong message the way that they put it out, because they, you know, them having that platform, you can't live a normal life. Like, if I'm not a huge celebrity, so if I posted something like that, it's like, okay, you know, this is what I went through. But like with celebrities posting these, they have to understand the platform they have many, many young people that look up to them.
Just to say something really quickly, you said selfishness comes after somebody who attempts suicide. I think selfishness is a sociological thing. Like, it's about society and how they view suicide, and a lot of people see suicide as a selfish act, you know, especially people who are close to the person who has or will or whatever. Mental illness is something you can't control. A lot of people, when they hear mental illness, they think of schizophrenia and they think of, like, you know, an issue that we all know. But actually, statistically, a lot of people who commit suicide are not diagnosed with anything. And that's the problem. A lot of people are not focusing on, you know, like, really diving in and, like, trying to solve the issue before it gets to that point.
Yeah, so what do you think it is that
I definitely think it's the world.
I think
the world is causing it. I'm a firm believer in the world having a huge effect on the way we feel and think, because specifically depression, there's this expectation that we need to meet, that society created. And and I blame social media, I blame the internet, I blame these celebrities making money for being famous, just for looking perfect, so to say.
I want to take it back to, like, the mentality that we might have at home in Africa, where we sometimes believe that it's spirits and demons that have come into your body and are taking over you.
I believe that. I believe that, though.
And that's usually interesting that
I
you say
believe that too.
Yeah.
You know,
believe in
and
spirits.
even today.
Yeah, I believe like there's spirits that do have a dominion over you sometimes, and it could come. But that, I mean, wait,
isn't that the mental illness?
yes,
I'm
Africans.
confused.
Listen, Africans. Whatever you
I think they're two separate things.
Wait.
Yeah,
No.
Spirituality and the mentality are
No. For some
combined.
people who don't believe in the spirituality, they'll say it's mental illness. For people who do believe in spirituality, they'll say it's a spiritual problem.
But I think the disease like a spiritual disease, or do you know?
All right, listen. With the spiritual, it depends on how you go about your spirituality. Now, if you're a Christian, you'll pray over it. If you're a Muslim, you'll pray over it. No. You can't say wait. You can't listen. You can't say no because you don't know what works for other people. The craziest things can take people out of like a suicidal mentality. It could be watching a TV show and you be like, oh, I feel that. Like, nah, I don't want to take my life no more. Somebody could hit you up right now on this platform in your DMs and be like, yo, I watched your show. I heard what you said. I was going through it and I just took back. I didn't do it no more. I couldn't do it no more. The littlest things can take somebody out of like a suicidal mentality. So I don't downplay anything. You just calling somebody right at the right moment, be like, hey, what's good? You good, man? Like, I'm good. Why?
Little things matter.
The littlest
When
things.
it comes to spirituality versus what we're talking about, mental illness, since you brought up the topic of, thinking about a negative energy or spirit, for me personally, from like an Islamic background, I don't think that mental illness is because of spirits. I think they're two separate entities. So for us as Muslims in the Quran, Allah tells us that we shouldn't fall into despair. Why? Because once you fall into despair, what happens? You can't really, when you're in like, let's say, when you're in like an emotional breakdown, you don't think clearly anymore. The only way to get out of that state that you're in is to think about what's physically here at this time. This is something that is used in psychology. You have to think about where you are at this moment because your mind is going to keep reeling on all the negative energy. This is something also that's based on a lack of discipline of the mind. And a lot of people don't know that they're supposed to even be disciplining their mind, to control their own thoughts, to stop themselves from falling into certain desires that are not going to benefit them at the end. And in this case, the desire that this individual might be feeling is to end it. I don't believe there's not one human being who hasn't had that thought creep up on them at least once. Even if it was a little whisper, it'll creep up. And that's a teaching that we have in Islam. And that's why Allah warns us of this. He warns us that this, when it happens, when you reach disparity, don't fall into it. Don't allow yourself to go in. And that is why I keep saying that we have to discipline our minds. But many people don't know that this is even the way to go about it. The way to go about it is to discipline your mind. And how do you do that? You can start by, having every day, wake up in the morning and say, I am a good person because such and such. I can do this because such and such. Just basically training yourself every day, just like you train every other part of your body. That is also a desire because, like we said,
is that
pain,
a demon or a desire?
No, I'm saying desire. If it was a demon, I'd say demon. This is a desire. But when I say the spirituality is different, it's because your mentality, the way you think is just the way we're set as humans. Outside forces, however, when I say spirituality now, can influence that or induce it more. You understand?
That's my point.
So it's not, I don't feel like that what I have inside me is a bad spirit that's making me think this. I know that I'm thinking this, and I keep thinking this, and I keep thinking this, and then more negative forces are coming here, seeing an opportunity to push me further.
Well, I think personally, a lot of it has to do with something that I don't think was mentioned, was like lack of love. Like, very simply put, you know,
we need to love each other.
You have people who come from broken homes and who don't have fathers, don't have mothers.
Alone, have no family, no friends.
It's, you know, us as strangers, we just like, we don't appreciate people in the truest sense. We don't hold doors. We don't say thank you. You know, a person could have gone through a litany of things and problems. That one kind act and gesture you did, you know, maybe to buy a guy Starbucks or whatever it was, could give them hope. And I think love is
because when someone commits suicide, you have to think of like they're killing themselves. They can't live. So life must be so bad that they can't.
But Sochi, what about like self-love. Like, my life is hard. Everyone's going through something, but like, I love myself enough to know that like, I'm going to see another day.
But what are
I'm going to
you
make it through
specifically?
this.
But what are you specifically going through in terms of struggles? If
don't
a
think it has to
female,
do with
if, what about? No, right. But what type of struggle is so severe?
No.
If you're a man or woman that
Don't ever do that.
But
Don't ever do
what
that.
I'm saying is that what if a woman or a man, for example, got raped, sexual abuse,
I don't think it matters
emotional
what the struggle
abuse.
is.
It doesn't
It could be as
matter.
simple as I'm in $10,000 debt. It could be as simple as that. But the difference
That ain't
between
simple.
the difference. I know, right? That's what I'm saying. He said if someone got raped versus I don't think you should compare struggles.
No, you can't.
I don't feel like it's right to compare struggles in any situation. I don't care how bad someone's struggle may seem compared to another person. When you're talking about mental illness, that struggle for person one may be astronomical to them and may put them on the brink of suicide, whereas it might not for the second person who may be going, quote unquote, going through more.
I'm not trying to compare struggles, but like what I'm saying is that we have to look at the environmental factors as a whole, yes. But I also want to make a point that like we have to look at the genes too.
Perception.
The perception of it. Like suicide and those thoughts. Like people don't really realize disease is passed down through the family, through generations. What I wanted to explain with that, specifically when Shoshi, was explaining that you can't compare, the struggles of people who are have committed suicide or who are dealing with depression or any of those bouts of emotions. What I was trying to say and trying to convey is that yes, we all deal with different struggles and emotions in our lives, but what specifically made that person fall within those suicidal behaviors? What are those reasons? And I really wanted to specifically list those reasons because those reasons are different for everyone. Our genes are so in tune with how our bodies work, and so people don't realize that more. So what I wanted to say is there are genes, there may be genes within that person's family that they're predisposed to that, and then the factors of maybe financial debt, emotional abuse by like a parent or a boyfriend or girlfriend can push them over the edge.
Can I say something? Like, I personally have dealt with depression in my life before, and it was hard for a long time. I was going like weeks on end without getting out of bed, but I was able to pick myself up out of that. Out of my own will and strength and strength of mind.
How do you do it?
I had to start. I had to put myself in the position every single day with my willpower, consciously, to get up and get out and make myself better, feel better.
But is it fair?
But I'm saying,
is it fair to agree that you had hope? You had hope. You knew you were.
I had to struggle to find it, but I found it.
Something, right?
So when I was about 20 years old, I had just moved to New York. I had no friends, no people around me, no family. I came all the way by myself. And it just, I got lonely, and I felt like I was under a lot of pressure because I was going to school and I had to, succeed, and it just became like a lot. And so I spent a lot of time, wallowing in my own pity. I really had to struggle and fight to find the strength in myself to lift myself up, get out there, make the best of my life and this experience that I'm having. But it was like a good couple of months of just being alone and isolated and very, very sad.
I have a question now. So do we feel like there's a level of weakness? That's a weakness now. If you kill yourself, there's a level of mental weakness.
When you say that.
Wait. Listen.
When people say that if you commit suicide or if you're having suicidal thoughts or you're in a depression that you're weak, I think that's highly insensitive. I think that's highly ignorant. I think that if you go about having that type of mentality towards those who are suffering through illnesses, you know, like how can we all get along? How can we show each other love when we can't see someone's pain?
Before we get, you know, sentimental about this, let's think about it for a second. We don't try and pick the right words to say for certain situations. Sometimes we got to say it like it is, and then we figure out how we can handle it. Because I'm trying to pick the right word, like, I don't know. Like, I'm not saying weakness in the sense of, oh, you're pathetic and you're weak. I'm saying there is a level of mental
illness.
Illness.
Illness is not
But
weakness.
you can't be weak because it's
when
a
you're
disease.
ill, you are weak.
You can't help.
No. But when you're ill,
illness is a weakness.
Weakness, yes. It is a weakness upon your body, upon your mind.
Of your body.
And your full strength.
Of your body, yes, and your brain. There's a chemical,
But that
it's literally...
perception is the problem, right? Because you look at someone who's weak and you kind of look down on them.
That's not what it is.
Not always. I don't look down at a cancer patient.
Not at all. Well, man, people hear weakness, and yes, it is a negative thing, but it's not a derogatory term for something. If I say someone has a mental weakness, I'm not saying that they're pathetic, they're weak. I mean, I'm not saying that they're pathetic. I'm just saying that they're not strong enough mentally. And there's a lot of areas where a lot of us are not strong enough. We're weak in certain areas. Somebody could be weak with discipline. They don't know how to discipline themselves. Somebody could be weak when it comes down to, a man could be weak when it comes down to women. He don't know how to control his lust.
I think people look down on certain illnesses, though. I mean, you look down on someone who might have like HIV or, you know, compared to cancer.
People
Tolerance.
just need
So
Jesus.
we're talking about tolerance
People
now.
need
We're not
Jesus.
like being
Real talk.
tolerant of each other's struggles.
Just to speak about New York City specifically, like dating out here is so difficult. Like I can't even go on a proper date with a guy, you know, without him feeling that he's like a little bit like we're selfish out here. Everybody's very selfish, grimy, and you know, like that takes a toll on a person, and that leads to is there something wrong with me? Loneliness is one of the leading causes of suicide.
Right.
You know, people feel alone, and I think, you know, it has to do with the society that we live in. That's why it brings me back to the world comment that I mentioned. You know, I was speaking to you earlier, and I mentioned that I had a friend of mine who committed suicide. He lived in Morocco. The unemployment rate in Morocco is very high, but it's a kingdom, and there's a lot of money coming in through tourism, the black market. There's a lot of stuff going on in Africa that they could, you know, make a lot of money, and they're not helping out their citizens. So with no money, no honey, you know, like you're not doing anything, and that takes a toll on you.
Yeah,
I want to quickly talk.
I want to quickly talk about that African perception of it. I was asking my parents, mom and dad, Nigeria, lived in Nigeria their whole lives, and I wanted to ask them, what does the Nigerian culture think about suicide? And my mom and dad literally said, my mom, that it's an abomination. An abomination. Literally, when somebody commits suicide in the Nigerian culture, they will bury them, instead of burying them in their compounds, because that's how Nigerians bury their family members. They bury them in the forest, deep in the forest.
That's where the cultural thing comes in.
It's an embarrassment. Even though the family's sad, it is part of the culture.
So to add on that, Cody, I actually tried to research the World Health Organization stats on suicide rates in Africa. You can't find them.
You can't find any.
Because what they do when someone commits suicide, and they died of an unnatural cause.
The real unfortunate part about that is, in the Ethiopian culture, I know there's a lot of suicides. I've grown up, unfortunately, as a child, knowing of family members and family friends who had committed suicide. An uncle who literally came home from church with his family, went into the garage and shot himself in the head. A 19-year-old gorgeous girl who just came from Eritrea, was living in the States, killed her roommate, and then hung herself in the bathroom.
And what were the reasons for the?
And this is a thing. I think it's a cultural thing as well. How we were saying, it's the fact that, you know, you have your family members that put so much pressure onto you, and it's like I can't even deliver. I can't make them proud, and it's so unfortunate that, you know, they're trying to prove themselves to you, and at the same time, after you commit suicide, it's like you still don't win.
You know, so a lot of pressure as Africans.
It's a lot of pressure, and that's where I think that we as Africans and, you know, our generations and generations before us, we need to understand that we just want to make you happy. We want to be happy. And you have to understand that you're in America now. Like, so much has changed. Like, we're not in Africa.
About the African continent? I feel like we have to do so much better for our home countries. I mean, this is crazy.
We need more awareness for mental illness in Africa.
Basically.
It's like non-existent.
No therapy.
There's no therapy.
The African continent in terms of like medicine and whatnot, it's not there. All these doctors, all these people die every day.
You know what it is? Like, arguably, you'll probably think that America has a higher suicidal rate than Africa, like, or some countries in Africa. I think the reason there might be truth, or there is truth to that, is because of, like, the idea in, like, especially Nigeria, people won't leave you alone. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Like, they won't leave you alone. Like, like you have a kid, they all in your house. Yep. You got your aunt, your cousins, somebody you don't know, random person, all in your house. God forbid you lose a loved one, all in your house. There's a strong support system in Nigeria. Like, people are all in your face around you. In America, especially New York, we don't have that support system. I call you my best friend, I don't hear from you for months, weeks, days at a time, almost a year. In Nigeria, there's like the support system there is crazy, it's strong. It's like, it's hard to be alone. It's hard to be left alone because everybody's in your business, from neighbors, aunts, uncles, cousins, family, friends. Like, they're involved, like they're there. We don't really get that too much in America, especially New York, because we're just so consumed with working. I mean, you work, 9 to 5, you probably take 30 to an hour to get home, running errands. Like, I have some people that I see in the back of my mind, I want to check up on, and then I just completely forget because I'm so consumed with, like, everything I'm doing. And sometimes I end up feeling away if nobody check up on me, but I gotta remember, we all busy, we all got things going on.
Salute to all, my Nigerians and, Eritrean, Ethiopian in the house. I'm an African American, so I think that like a voice that has been untapped and unspoken, like when it comes to some of the things that our people go through. I mean, all of our people, but some of the things that African Americans go through. Me personally, I was in a dark place. Right. I look at my life and I look at not having a father, looking at stereotypically and historically things that I've had to go through that could have led me to suicide, that could have led me to continue on with depression. I went through these things, and so I had to seek out love. And sometimes when you don't love yourself, that's the most important thing. You have to love yourself. Sometimes those insecurities can eat you up. Sometimes you don't think you're pretty enough. You don't think you're tall enough. You don't think you're slim enough. You don't think so all of these things play a factor. And along with someone just damaging your credibility and your mental, and it plays on you and it weighs on you. So I think personally, we need to love ourselves first.
But what's the support system in like the African American home like for what you experienced?
Well, me personally, non-existent. I mean,